Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. I am your co host, Thomas Vick, joined by Seth Wilson, the other co host of this great podcast. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. It is good to be recording with you today. It's been a few since we've had the capacity to do this, and it's always fun to have that extra work to do in the office. But this kind of stuff, thinking about working on your business as opposed to always in the business, is always so much fun to brainstorm with you and share some of this information with other lawyers out there as well. How about yourself?
It's going great. I just got back from a little errand that I had to run. The sun is out. It's 80 degrees in late April in Indianapolis. It's just a wonderful time of the year. Really enjoyed getting out a little bit this afternoon and getting a little bit of sunshine in my life. But yeah, things are good. As we've kind of talked about this podcast, we've started to steer it towards law office management and how to help solo and small firm attorneys start their practice or even grow their practice. And today we kind of wanted to talk about the stage in law office management from the time that a client hires you to kind of what happens next, that little jump that happens in the law office life cycle. And so I'll kind of open it up to you, Seth. I guess I'll kind of set the stage and say you've got a client sitting in your office and you've gone over the recommendations that you have suggested to the client, and the client is ready to hire you. What needs to happen next?
Yeah, so we're talking about kind of on the cycle here. We've taken that connection and turned it into a contact and or a client. And so the step really that is important there is some type of client agreement. That's an engagement letter, that's a signed contract, those kind of things that are going to detail the scope of the representation, the attorney fees involved, and provide that opportunity to give the client informed consent to the representation. And as kind of a side note here, I don't know about your practice, but our practice is also very intentional about sending disengagement or no hire letters. If someone has maybe consulted with us but hasn't yet made that determination if they're going to retain us or if they need an attorney or what have you. And so we want to make sure that at some level in between kind of this phase 2 and phase 3, we've got some documentation and clear understanding of what any ongoing responsibility for the law firm may be. So we do that through that client agreement and or some type of disengagement letter. How about your office? How do you guys handle that?
Very similar. What you don't want is prospective clients meeting with you, talking with you over the phone, and then it's just hanging out there and nothing really happens. There may have been a little bit of legal advice that you provided to them in that consultation, and you need to, confirm with them in writing in some way that, this is what we talked about and nothing else, and we're not going to take any steps to assist you until you hire us. Or, if they do hire us, we want to confirm that as well and say, these are the tasks that you want us to assist you with. And that's really from a liability standpoint. You need to have those engagement letters or non-engagement letters that clarify to the client what the relationship is. And a lot of times somebody will call you on the phone and have a brief 5 to 10 minute phone call, and they think that you're their attorney for life, and you're not. You just, had a brief conversation with them. So making sure that you've got some kind of process in place to confirm that in writing is really, really important from a ethical standpoint.
Agreed. And like I say, those pieces of the puzzle are important to work into your onboarding checklist as you're thinking about how am I going to interact with and track these consults that I've had. And I think the key test is, does the individual or those individuals that you've met with see you as their lawyer? Doesn't matter if there's no agreement, doesn't matter if there's letters or that thing. It's more based on what the prospective client thinks about the relationship. So if they were expecting you to be their lawyer and take action on their behalf, and you don't, that can create a problem. And so you just want to make sure that that communication is clear. I will say there have been times where that does create a little bit of client follow up needed, because you may send a no hire letter to someone who kind of thought, well, I'm not ready to hire you yet, but there's still that possibility in the future. And so you want to be careful about some of that, because then you get into, well, I sent you the no hire, but you may be coming back.
Yeah.
And so you have to have a way to track those to ensure that, okay, right now we don't have an attorney client relationship, but it's very possible that in the future we could again. So just making it clear so the client understands that the attorney in the firm has not taken on any responsibility. We don't need to monitor anything on your behalf. We don't need to file anything with the court. Yet we can reopen your file when and if you're ready for that later on.
Yeah, and yeah, all really, really good advice so that the client understands the relationship. That's the main thing. You want to make it clear in writing what the relationship is going forward and just set client expectations. I think that's one thing with running a law firm. If you can manage client expectations, then you're probably going to have a happy client at the end of the day.
Yeah, and so much of life comes down to communication. Clear communication, clear documentation of that communication, and ensuring that the recipient, whoever you're communicating to, understands that communication. And so, as you think about then the client agreement, you need to make sure that that is clear and has everything spelled out to the best that you can to meet the expectations of the client. What's going to be the scope of the representation? How much is each party sort of responsible for, and who is going to be doing what? And making sure that the details that you know at that time are generally provided. And I think it's another great opportunity to communicate to your client and get their informed consent as to how your practice operates. Maybe you have a list of, in your engagement letter or your terms and conditions, or however you handle that, the types of software, for example, that you're going to use. And you are disclosing that ahead of time to the client, so that if you use a cloud-based law practice management system, for example, the client isn't surprised that you're hosting their data somewhere. They know about it. They have an opportunity then to ask questions about it. And you've probably already talked about most of that when you've met with and developed that relationship with the prospective client. But it's good to have that in writing and have that informed consent that we're comfortable with proceeding on these terms.
Yes, and for the estate planning attorney, it's also important that if you're going to be hired by a married couple, that you've got a waiver of conflict of interest. It's always kind of funny. I tell the husband and wife, that husbands and wives don't always agree. That may come as a surprise to you all, but husbands and wives don't always agree. And they always kind of get a kick out of that. But it's really important. There are situations, I've had situations where the husband and wife don't agree on how the property is to be used, even though they've been married for decades. They're still not agreeing on how things should go property wise at their death. And so you got to have that discussion and help them to understand, well, I'm not going to be telling secret, keeping secrets here. I'm going to have to be open and honest with both of you. And if there's going to be a disagreement that, is a non-waivable conflict of interest, then I may have to completely get out. So that kind of information needs to be in there, similar with, business planning and things like that.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and we always call that our dual representation letter, because we're representing sort of the plan, and there's two individuals. And this isn't unlike a scenario where it might be a business client with multiple individuals involved in the business. You have to be very clear who you represent as the attorney. Do you represent the individual or do you represent the entity? And then you have to think about what potential conflicts could be there and make sure that if everybody's comfortable with waiving those conflicts, those waivers are accurately presented, signed, and documented. Those are important pieces of the puzzle when you talk about these types of dual representations and a situation that could put you in a conflict to say, hey, if I learn information here and this goes sideways, I can't represent anybody. I'm going to be conflicted out of the entire situation. And so let's just be real careful as we're going into this relationship that we understand and have documented clearly everybody's expectations and have the appropriate waivers in place if necessary. So those are really good points to think about. Once you have that signed client agreement, Thomas, what happens next in terms of your particular case flow and management?
Well, the next step is really critical to me because if I miss the next step, then the next few weeks are there's going to be a problem somewhere down the line, 2 or 3 weeks from now. I'm thinking specifically about my estate planning clients. So if my next step is to convert it over from my CRM to my law practice management program. I use Lawmatics for my CRM purposes. So I convert that from Lawmatics to Clio. And then I've got certain things that I've got to do so that my staff understands what needs to happen next. And one of the main things that includes is assigning a task list that I've already generated. There are probably 10 to 15 tasks that are included in my task list for estate planning matters. These are steps, these are documents, these are drafting stages that have to happen every single time. And I did it enough that I knew that I needed to have a list generated. So it's really, really important that I assign that task list so that everybody in the office knows there's a new case, we got to get on it. These are my responsibilities. And then if I've calendared, a signing appointment or a design meeting, then I make sure that that is in there. I update my calendar. So again, my staff knows what's happening. And then if there are some takeaways from the meeting with the client, some specificity that needs to be communicated to my staff, I put that in the notes or I send a message to the staff so that they know what's going on. And that's so important because if the staff doesn't receive that message, then the ball is going to be dropped. And unfortunately, there have been a few times where I get busy and I converted the matter, but I didn't put the signing appointment on there. And we didn't remember what time the signing appointment was. Or I converted everything, got the signing appointment, and I didn't assign the task list. And so it didn't really generate to my paralegal to start working on the documents and making phone calls to the client to follow up. So ensuring that you've got that system in place is critical, I think, to making sure that things get done. If you do well at that step, then you're going to get a good result. At least you're setting yourself up for a good result.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great reminder as you're thinking through each of these steps and the different phases that we're talking about. And each, I think, should have some type of checklist like that. And the software, practice management software that we use is Clio, and it has the built-in or the ability to kind of keep a memorized list of those tasks, and you can assign who it goes to and different things along with that. But I like to, whenever I go through a multi-step situation, whenever I get the thing, whether it's a document or a phone call or an email that starts that, I like to just write down each of the steps and start to see, okay, which of the things will I typically group together and do at the same time? And then I will write a description of the task, and then I will put what to do in the body of the task, all of the instructions that I can think of at that time. I don't worry about it too much in terms of having it perfect. It's no, these are reminders. I know what I need to do. Then my team needs to know what is expected of them and what are the deliverables. And then the beauty about Clio is you can start setting dependent due dates upon when that trigger date is issued, right? When you assign it, and or set some other deadlines. And so I have tasks that are dependent on other tasks. So I may show up in the morning and have an overdue task, and I'll look at it and go, well, wait a minute, I didn't see the thing that came before it. So I can go into the matter and see, oh, staff wasn't here yesterday and they forgot to move their task ahead. I can adjust that or reach out to them and say, okay, where are we on this part of the process so I can get to my part of the process. But it helps delineate that, keep things moving forward. And like you said, most importantly, it gives us a way to practice effectively and get those repetitions in. And so make sure that I'm not missing one vital piece of the puzzle because, boy, I've done this so many times, I've got it down. It's a little bit annoying. And that's kind of the point. It should really kind of slow you down and make sure, yes, I've done this. Yes, I've got everything done. Yes, why did I make myself do this? So I don't forget. And so the client ultimately has the best service that I can offer them.
Yeah, I think this is really where working on the business is working on the business. You've done a set of tasks over and over again for an estate plan or an estate administration business plan, whatever the case might be, and you've started this repetition each time you get this same kind of matter. You got to do the same things. And you and I have talked about, when we find ourselves doing something like that over and over again, and we have the system down, that's when you got to stop just working in the business and create that task list that is automated every single time. And not only that, but if you're doing it every single time, there's maybe a likelihood that someone in your firm can do that. It's probably not something that necessarily needs legal judgment on. For instance, drafting an estate plan. Of course, an attorney needs to review it and make sure, but entering contact information is not something an attorney should be doing. It needs to be staff that works on that kind of thing. And so you can put procedures into place, task lists into place that will allow the staff to know what they're doing. And that relieves you to work on other matters, work on things where only an attorney can write this brief or have this phone call or get out there and do rainmaking, do marketing, things like that. It frees you up. And that's why it's so important to have task lists. It can really provide a lot of direction to your law firm.
Yeah, and it's so helpful from a stress management standpoint because you've already done the thinking, you already know what it takes, and you can always adjust it. And so, one thing that I actually have on my list is one task in particular when I close a matter that says review the file, take a look at anything unique that maybe you learned from this file, and adjust the other lists accordingly. And sometimes I'm so busy, I just kind of mark that one complete. But it's always that catch to say, wait a minute, there's something I learned here that I can pass on and improve how our office does client service. And ultimately that's the goal, is these lists are meant to provide as good a quality product as we can for our clients in as efficient a methodology as possible for them without making a mess of things in the middle and focusing on the relationship aspect than data entry. And that's the key, I think, for us is as we're looking at this, who is the right person to be handling this aspect of the estate plan.
Yeah, and one thing I might add to this idea of task lists and things like that, Clio allows you to assign who is the responsible staff member, who is the responsible attorney on the matter. And that is just another tool that Clio has to help you direct where priorities need to be in your law firm. I would encourage everybody to use that and honor it, so to speak. If the responsible attorney is the one that is really the responsible one, then let's direct questions to that person. Let's make sure that that attorney is the one that is handling it and not kind of going back and forth from attorney to attorney on a single file. Let the responsible attorney handle it, and that will tell the staff that's around you where to submit questions for guidance on a particular matter.
Yeah. And if it's just you, the task list is a staff member for you
Right.
because it operates as a second brain. And so, you're telling yourself when you had time to think about this, these are at least the things I want to be considering at this juncture of the matter. Don't forget to make sure I've selected who the responsible attorney is. Don't forget to make sure I put that time estimate in the task. If you have the right level of Clio, you can actually add the estimated time associated with the task. So you can get a good picture of the workload that you're creating for yourself and going, well, I need 3 hours worth of time on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Well, that means I'm not leaving here till 6:30. Is that really what I wanted to do? Or maybe I need to move that to Monday. Those are the things that can help that second brain kind of kick into gear and go, did I take on maybe more than I can do today, which we all, I think, have a tendency to do. And the task list helped me go, man, I've got 10 things. I really can't add anything else today. So if my buddy's calling and saying, hey, can I meet you at such and such a time to go golf or something? No, I can't because I've got this level of work. Or I know I can move that to another day and adjust accordingly. So I think that's really helpful, especially if it's more of you as a startup going, how do I understand sort of the level of what I have to do?
Yeah. 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 I think the task lists and matter responsibility, those are just great tools that Clio has, and I'm sure that other law practice management programs have them as well. You and I work with Clio, and so we're a little bit biased as far as that's concerned, but just it makes law practice easier when you've done it once. You kind of blaze the trail one time, and then now you know what you need to do the next time. It'll just be a little bit easier. It's kind of like the flywheel. It's once you start, it's really, really hard, but the more that you put into these task lists, the faster it's going to start spinning. And by the time that, you're done, there's no stopping. There's no stopping. And so, yeah, highly encourage people to just keep working at that task list. It's an always evolving system. And that's one key to a law practice, right? You're always trying to improve it. The minute that you stop trying to improve it is the minute that your firm is probably going to go out of business. So you gotta come into it with an attitude that you're going to continue to improve processes all the time.
And the practice is so you get better. That's why it's called a practice. So each time you're learning something, you're getting better. Each repetition that you do helps you grow in your ability to serve. And that's a really important thing. And one kind of concept I try to keep in mind when I'm putting these checklists together is that my system has to be at its best at time of stress. So if I've got a system that is, well, we always have to do these three things to make the system work, you've got to fix that, because that day where the client's there and there's an emergency and something else is going on, you don't have time and something's going to get missed if you haven't done that. So if you know there's an adjustment that needs to be made, it's good to hit the pause button right then, get it fixed so that the system can work, because you want to just keep getting it better and better and not keep sort of tripping over that aspect. Oh, I'll get to it later and get that fixed. I'm certainly guilty of that because it seems not important in the moment because I know how to get around it. But ultimately, if I'm not here for some reason and somebody has to step into me, they may not know. I may not have trained them yet that, oh yeah, we changed that and it's now really over here. And so you want to really work through that and kind of keep that idea that the system has to be at its best in time of stress.
Yep. I love that. I love that. It is so true. One example of that is, okay, you've got a deed that is in your templates, and you always know that, there's an extra, I don't know, period that has to be deleted every single time. And it's so easy to create that deed and everything's ready, but you know that you got to delete that extra period so that it's perfect. Well, I mean, just change the template and then you don't have to worry about that. That's, again, the stress. It doesn't seem like a lot of stress, but it's going to irritate you, and especially your staff members. I mean, you're going to have to, they're not necessarily aware of little things like that. And it may not be a period, it may be, a more significant legal term that needs to be changed. And, you just have to have to be aware of those things
Yeah,
and make a
for
change.
sure. For sure. And I think in a future episode, it would be good for us to kind of talk through the matter itself in Clio and or the other practice management systems that are out there and how that works and what are the tools available and the, kind of the methodology, both from sort of an overview of I'm handling a lot of matters to more of the single, what am I doing on this particular matter, and how sort of those task lists on that matter can interplay or intersect with your practice as a whole. And I know you and I have talked in past of how AI is coming in to sort of help go, boy, you haven't touched this matter in a week. Maybe that's going to be more of a priority for you. But there's some ways that you can set those things up to really help yourself and your practice.
That sounds like a great discussion for which all should tune in. So we'll look forward to that. Yeah, this has been another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast with Seth Wilson and Thomas Vick. We hope that you guys continue to watch us, and we ask that you subscribe on the YouTube channel and everywhere where you can get this podcast. Give us a follow, make a comment. All of those things would be great and help us out. Get the word out. We're the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer podcast. We help lawyers launch.
Thomas, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time today. And I echo those sentiments. Really want to be a resource for lawyers who are in the throes and have done it for a while. Hopefully, provide some ideas based on our experience and other mistakes we've made to share. And also those who may be considering launching their own law firm. And so I love that idea of we help lawyers launch and get that thing going. So take a look at YouTube at Lifetime Legacy Lawyers, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Seth.